Welcome back to the Entrepreneurs Podcast. I've got with me today Mike Garner, who is a lifelong copywriter, I would say. There you go, not far off.
It's true.
So Mike, welcome to the podcast. And obviously, we've had a bit of a chat about some various different things. It's nice to have you here.
Thank you very much.
You are welcome. Mike, as I said before, is a copywriter and also a published author. Mike, do you want to sort of give us a little bit of background how you ended up in copywriting?
How I ended up in copywriting. I've been self-employed for almost 30 years, which is basically half my life. I was originally a translator because I lived in France. I had the brilliant idea. I know, because I was at one of those kind of stages in life where you think, well, what am I going to do now, basically? I thought, I know, I'll speak English. I can speak English. I'll speak in French. I'll be a translator. You know, you don't know what you don't know. And I was okay at that. Built up something kind of quite good for best part of 15 years, perhaps a bit more than that. And I got bored with being a translator. In the meantime, I've moved back to the UK. Um, and I kind of morphed into copywriting. Um, and I was doing okay, not pulling up any trees, as they say, but I was paying the bills, doing bog standard copywriting, writing blog posts, writing emails, and things like that. And then 2020 happened, and apart from anything else that may have happened there, in January, I put my mother in a home. She has Alzheimer's. She was a danger to herself. That was emotional in itself. And a week later, my wife's diagnosed with breast cancer. She's fine now, but January started with a bang, and then all the things that happened during lockdown and stuff. My mother had a bad fall in the May, broke her ribs on both sides. She broke a cheekbone. She had a bleed on the brain. Now, for normally constituted people like you and me, bleeding on the brain isn't great. 87, she'd never survived the surgery. So came out of hospital for palliative care, and she died on the 21st of June, which was the day after my 60th birthday. No, my wife's 60th birthday. I say that because it gets better. When all those things are happening, you kind of roll with the punches, and then afterwards you think, what the hell just happened? You're the wrong side of 60. Your mother was 26 when you were born. What are you going to do with the rest of your life? Time to drop all the imposter syndrome. Time to drop all the not feeling good enough, as if it was that easy. It's not that easy, but you need a starting point. And towards the end of the year, I did some work with a writing coach in the US who's very close to Seth Godin, and on my writing voice. And Margaret got me writing because I can write about you till I'm blue in the face. That's kind of what I do. But writing about myself was a nightmare. And we all feel that because we all feel insignificant, not insignificant, but we all feel like that our lives aren't necessarily important because they're ours. So we think that we're boring. We think we have nothing particular to say. Anyway, Margaret got me writing, and I wrote 20,000 words in 3 weeks because she said to me the most important thing anybody's ever said to me was that just because you write something down doesn't mean to say you have to publish it, but write it down you must get it out of your head imperfectly in any format. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter if it's a complete dog's dinner. It doesn't matter because no one's going to see. You can't edit what's in your head. Now there's the number of that had a number of effects, one of which was the stuff that's going to lay on my hard drive forever. But the sheer fact that I got it out meant that I told somebody. So I felt
Mhm.
a lot better about it. There's other stuff. Actually, I said to myself, actually, it's not so bad. And that ended up in the first book that I wrote, which stories that matter, the everyday stories of extraordinary business people, which is just basically a book about what it's like for people like you and me to ride to run a business. It's not your drug, if you want your Dragon's Den, go and read Peter Jones, go and read Duncan Ballantyne and people like that. This is what happens when I don't want to use the word lifestyle business, but what most normal businesses do, why we set up businesses in the first place, what happens, the kind of things we run up against, and the idea that we have something to say. because the big, big, big turning point with me, it was the back end of 2020, the beginning of 21, was it was a realization that people were interested in what I have to say.
Mhm.
And people are interested in what everyone has to say. Or there are people that are, not everybody necessarily, but that doesn't matter. I have an audience. Always remember the first time it was a copywriter in the US said to me, I love hearing your stories. Huh?
Mm.
Didn't know I had any. Well, apparently I do. So there we go. I've got to
No,
my
I love that.
stage.
Did
Yeah.
did you find the when you wrote the book, did you find it was almost therapy for you because you've been
Oh,
through a
completely.
traumatic time?
It was, yeah, but not just that, not just the time I've been through. It was my entire life, I think, because it enabled me to. I've written a couple of my childhood traumas
Mm.
in there, only because now I'm over them. I'd done some work on them a couple of years previously, and that's the one thing I do say to clients is be completely open about your stories, about what you want to say, but don't say anything that you are not completely over,
Mm.
because your audience is not your therapist. And we've all seen the Instagram meltdowns and whatever. It's not a good look.
Mm.
If you're running a business, you do need to build some kind of trust. And there's a difference between being authentic and being vulnerable and having a meltdown.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
And people restrict people, your ideal audience at least, and that's really all that matters, respects your vulnerability, respects your openness. If you have a meltdown, what so they think you're a mug, but I mean it has all
Yeah,
kinds of other connotations, if you
yeah.
like.
No, I see. I know what you mean. You said something interesting actually about before you wrote the book and you felt like you had a bit of imposter syndrome going on and
Yeah.
everything else. I
Well, we
think
all do.
that's a common trait amongst very, very small business owners anyway. You
We
know,
all do.
we all do. We've all walked into a networking room and we've heard, I don't know, 60 odd voices turn around and say, yes, I'm going great. My business is flying and everything else.
And they're all
And the
lying.
thing is, and you actually know, really, realistically, most people in that room have got some kind of imposter thing. Did, did you find the book, did you find the book helped you overcome the imposter syndrome or
It was.
had you overcome it by that point?
I, no, I think it's all part of the mix. One thing I do really believe, I may have come to this round about the time that I was writing the book, but it's not necessarily connected, is that imposter syndrome is your friend.
Hmm.
It's a sign that you are growing. I joined a group of copywriters led by Joanna Weeb, who is one of the most successful copywriters in the world. She runs Copy Hackers, which is the biggest educational resource for copywriters in the world. Um, and I thought, oh, all these hyper successful people in here. And in fact, it all turned out that they were just about so much of a mess as me. And actually, from that group, I got to interview Joanna for the book.
Mm.
I mean, she's lovely. I mean, she's worth a number of zeros. And I've had a few conversations with her over the years. And I met her we had dinner. I say me and 25 other copywriters, not just me and her, had dinner in London a couple of years ago. And when it got to picking the people who were going to stand up and do a bit of talking, I was the first one she spoke to point it right. You're going to, and just it was kind of an out of body experience. Me sitting here talking about that story about my mother and kind of 2020 and other things. And I looked at her at one stage and she was just looking at me and I thought, this is just, this is not imposter syndrome me. This is
Hmm.
me moving into this space. You hear kind of stepping outside your comfort zone an awful lot. And I like the way the Navy SEALs put it, because obviously Navy SEALs are are trained within an inch of their lives because there cannot be any room for uncertainty in operations. And they don't talk about stepping outside your comfort zone because that implies uncertainty and pain. What they
Hmm.
do is they say expanding your zone of competence. It's
Hmm.
exactly the same thing, but it's just expressed in a different way.
Yeah.
I think that's a far better way of looking at it. Is that this when you're doing something new, yeah, it can be a bit scary, but once you've done it once, then you can do it again,
Yeah.
and
Absolutely.
it's no longer within your, I mean, your comfort zone, that wonderful place where nothing ever happens.
Mm. It's an interesting way of reframing it, isn't it? Expanding your
Yeah,
zone of
really.
confidence as opposed, it's putting a positive spin on something as opposed to putting a negative spin on
Yeah,
something.
because
And I,
because the
sp- I,
strategy is the difference.
yeah, I spent a lot of time talking with specialists in mindset and that kind of thing, and
Mm.
they all frame things in a very, very different way,
Yeah.
which isn't necessarily the traditional way of framing something. And I think that's really good. I know I love Stephen Bartlett's podcast. I listen to Stephen Bartlett quite a lot.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah. He's one of these people as well who encourages people to step outside of that comfort zone and embrace the imposter syndrome and everything. And I think that's actually really quite important to do.
He he always says he lives on the edge of his comfort zone,
Yeah.
which I
Yeah,
think.
I know when I sort of put myself out there a little bit more, um, I sometimes will write a post that's maybe a little bit more controversial, but it's authentic. And
Yeah.
sometimes I think, oh, I know this is going to create some comments, and you wonder the sort of comments that you're going to get back. But actually, it works. And when
Mm.
I produce Business Boost Academy, it's me, and I'm putting it out there, and it's me in the world, and there's an element of vulnerability about it. And I should imagine when you're writing a book as well, there is that element of
It's
vulnerability when you're putting
it's
your
a
thoughts down on
huge
a
element.
page.
Yeah, I'd almost say kind of doing a YouTube video or doing a podcast is even more of a leap, um, because it's something which is consumed relatively quickly.
Yeah.
If you've got a 30-minute YouTube video, for example, it's still not enough time to read that particular book. So it's different, if you like, because obviously a book is more complex. But standing up really for what you believe in is terrifying
Mm. Yeah.
because we are hardwired to want to fit in, you know, and comply. And I mean, it's a survival technique. It's nothing, it's nothing particular about you or me. Human beings have done it for forever. Because if you stand out too much, then you put yourself at danger. You put yourself in danger, and the saber-toothed tiger is going to get you. But that's just what people want to hear from you. I hear of a lot of people saying, I don't want to talk about myself.
Mm.
That's from your perspective, but I want to know what you think.
Mm. Yeah.
You know,
There's
that's
that authenticity.
it's
The one
it's
the one
it's a contradiction really as well.
the one thing I found as I've got older, I'm only 28 years old. I just look a hell of a lot older than I really am,
Well,
honestly.
I'm
Honest
only
game.
30 as well, so
But
yeah.
the one thing I've noticed as I've got older is I'm now more comfortable with saying actually what I truly believe and what I truly feel, whereas something that I'd always struggled with before. And I think it makes me better at what I do because I am now more comfortable in that area of that kind of thing. Um, Another thing that you talk about on your you talk about a lot about personal brand and the
Yeah.
importance of personal brand and that kind of thing. So where does that come from? How's the interest for you evolved in getting
I
involved
think
in
it's
that personal
well
brand?
because it's in the zeitgeist very much at the moment, and all the kids are talking about it. So I mean, I kind of follow it. Um, but it comes down to basic. It's just another name for something that's already always existed. You have a personal brand whether you like it or not, whether you know it or not. Um, because it just comes down to the impression you give, what other people are thinking of you. You
Hmm.
know, as Jeff Bezos said, you know, your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. Now, that's nothing new. They've just put another label on it.
Hmm.
Um, what is perhaps new is that people, particularly in terms of relative to the time I was growing up. I mean, I was a teenager in the 70s. I mean, um, and a young adult in the 80s and the 90s. And people don't trust brands the way they used to anymore,
Mm.
unless they're the kind of the very kind of hip brands, let's say. But as a general rule, trust for brands has kind of taken a nosedive. What they do trust, though, is the people that run them.
Mm.
I mean, in a way, Richard Branson was the precursor to all that. I mean, he was not the first personal brand because there was plenty well before him. But I mean, in my lifetime, he was when I was kind of younger, he was the one that stood out the most. Not that you need to be Richard Branson to be a personal brand. You don't need to be jumping out of aeroplanes
Hmm.
or things like that. But you need to, I suppose it's a question of cultivating some kind of trust around you,
Mm.
particularly when you're a solopreneur. I'm not sure I like that word, but kind of a one person business. Is that this may be me talking, but you don't want to be one dimensional.
Mm.
You don't want to be just what you do. Um, that doesn't mean to say you're not necessarily talking about what you have for breakfast and stuff like that. The way I like to look at it is you've got as a Venn diagram. So you've got you, your interests, your hopes, your wishes, your dreams, and whatever your principles on the one side, and you've got those of your potential client on t'other. And what you talk about is the bit in the middle.
Mm.
I always remember years ago talking to a financial advisor and a pretty straight-laced, you know, blue suit, blue shirt, blue tie, financial advisor in a networking meeting. And he said to me, "What do you expect from your financial advisor?" So I want to talk about non-financial advice stuff. And he was most taken aback, you know. And this is 10 years ago at least. Ironically named Robert Smith, if you like, if you're a curious.
Is
Um,
he in the cure?
yes. Um, but I mean, that's you know, let's face it, it's a pretty ordinary name. Um, and he didn't get the idea that I didn't want to talk about, you know, trusts or wills or you know, ISAs or something to him all the time. I wanted to talk about other stuff. I
Mm.
wanted to know what he was reading or, you know, interesting stuff. Because in a way, I take for granted that you know what you do.
Mhm.
You know how to do what you do. If you're an IFA, if you're an accountant, whatever, I take your professionalism in the strict sense of the word. You know your stuff. That's a given. I want to work with you because I can relate with you. I like you. What I often say one of my storytelling pitches is, how do you tell the difference between two accountants? They have exactly the same product. A balance sheet is a balance sheet most of
Mhm.
the time. You go to one rather than the other because you like them,
Mhm.
quite simply. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to work with people I don't like.
Yeah, it's something I talk about when I do a lot of sales training with people as
Yeah,
a as
well,
a as
exactly.
a
Yeah.
part of what I do.
Mm.
And one of the things that I say to everybody is sales is relationship based. And I
What's it?
think I think sales is far more relationship based now than it ever was before. So when I first started out in business 30 odd years ago, um, sales was very much about it was all around the product. It was everything.
It
It,
was
it was
transactional.
it
Yeah.
was all around that side of thing, the product, the pricing, and everything else.
Yeah.
And obviously the product has to be good and whatnot. But I think now very much more sales business, particularly for your solos that are out there that are working for themselves, it's so much more about relationship.
Yeah,
People do have the belief that if you can do the job for yourself, you've been doing that job for a very long time, you know what
yeah,
you're talking about. It is
yeah.
so much more about that whole personal relationship, the values that you have, and everything else.
And that's maybe what personal brand is all about on a very, very simple level is, do I like you?
Yeah.
And I don't have to like you, and you don't have to like me.
Mm.
You know, you don't have to align with my values. Though my values are fairly straightforward. Don't be a dick.
Yeah, mine are pretty similar as
Yeah,
well. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
but it's strange. Just on that note, it's strange how people react to that kind of thing. The second book I wrote was how to show off, beginner's guide to telling your story without being a dick.
Hmm.
Um, because simply because we all grew up, and everyone does that. You know, it's not just us in the Western world. Everyone grows up with the kind of running in our ears, don't brag. No one likes to show off, stay in your lane, and stuff like that. And we carry that into our adulthood.
Mm.
And the trouble, that's why people say, I don't want to talk about myself, because they were told by their parents it's not a good thing to do. It's rude, basically.
Hmm.
And that's why I think I was probably actually told that I was rude. That was rude.
Yeah.
Um, and it's certainly what kind of teachers tell you. What my teachers told me when I was in my primary school, let alone my father, but that's another issue. Um, but there's a line. There is a line between talking about yourself and being an asshole about it.
Hmm.
But it's much further away than you think it is. Because if I've learned nothing in the last 5 years, is that I can talk about myself and people will listen.
Hmm.
And that is just part of the back and forth of conversation. I mean, the first conversation that we had when the cameras weren't rolling, as it were, was just that. It was us talking about ourselves.
Hmm.
And we were both, I think we were both listening,
Yeah, absolutely.
and no one
Uh,
died.
Yeah, yeah. But
It's
I think where it comes into though, isn't it? It's that whole the bragging, it's the egotistical element to it, and that it's talking about yourself in such a way that doesn't come across like you're blowing smoke up your own arse, so to speak.
exactly, yeah.
You
And
know,
and and I think people are far too reticent to, I mean, you don't necessarily want to be the market trader with a gift of the gab and everything, or the kind of the bloke that talks about himself. Or there's a difference between um maybe I come back to the phrase from How to Win Friends and Influence People. Be interested, not interesting.
hmm
And you can talk about yourself being interested at the same time. Because the whole being interesting thing is, oh, look at me. That's what people don't want to do, and you don't need to do that.
no,
But that doesn't mean to say that you shouldn't talk about yourself.
yeah. But you
Because
can you
it's
can
all
talk, like you say, you can talk about yourself. If someone's talking about something, you can talk about yourself by relating to what they've said and putting your own experiences in place and
yeah,
relating to
it's a
people in that
perfect way for
respect.
doing it. Yeah.
And it's not an egotistical way of doing it. It's like you say, it's about being interested in what's being said and providing that element of empathy and everything else with the person that you're talking to and building that relationship. And it's a really important skill.
It
I
is.
think I think people sometimes lack that skill to be able to do that.
As a,
Um,
as a basic human need, and you'll know this as a sales trainer, is that we want to be understood.
uh,
We want our problems to be understood. Now, the way I frame it as a copywriter, with the kind of things, not necessarily that I'm saying, but that I'm writing or I'm doing on videos or something, is, you're joining the conversation your prospect is already having in their heads.
mm,
And that is all about empathy. I mean, obviously, the trick is finding out what that conversation is, but that's what research is for. The trick not just in modern sales, but in marketing generally, is not to blow your own trumpet, for to use a kind of very 1960s expression. It's to get into those your prospects' head. I mean, it's a technique of the old direct response marketers, the old nodding head technique, where you read down the sales letter and the person reading it agrees with everything you say,
Hmm.
every point that you make, like in a sales spiel. I mean, it's the same thing. Um, and then at the end, there's obviously a call to action, but the persuasion has already been done.
Yes.
There's no, the reaction at the end should be, well, where do I sign?
Mm.
Because you've already been convinced. There's no kind of big crescendo at the end of, buy my stuff, basically.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with what you're saying.
Yeah.
So obviously you work for yourself by
Yeah.
yourself, and you've done that for 147 years,
You know,
um,
that feels like it.
a little while.
Yeah.
What would you say is so? This podcast is aimed at supporting people who are
Yeah.
in our position. So people
Yeah.
who work for themselves by themselves. In the 30 odd years you've been working for yourself, what would you say is probably the biggest lesson that you've learned in that time?
Nothing is permanent
Okay.
because for most of us, it's up and down. I know the holy grail is to even out those ups and downs so you don't have, but it is, no, let's face it, we all face feast and famine
Yeah.
at some stage or other. And I've been in some pretty dark moments over the years, one way or another, for various reasons. Um, and everything, there's a solution to everything.
Hmm.
If you're in the doo-doo, there's all kinds of help out there. You just need to go and look for it or ask for it more than
Hmm.
anything. Um, if you're not in the doo-doo and you know people who are, help them because the karma will come back and knock you on the face, knock you on the side of the head. Um, I think that's the power of not necessarily networking per se, but the power of building networks as well.
Mm.
One thing I love about this, apart from the general freedoms of being able to, I know it's going to sound silly, but being able to go to the dentist on a Wednesday afternoon and not having to ask your boss for time off,
Hmm.
um, because I can still remember that. But it's just and you could also say you get to choose which 80 hours of the week you work and everything, but it's the relationships you build, which I find really powerful, particularly these days. Because I can talk to anybody anywhere in the world. I've just started working with a client in Washington, D.C. I've got another one in Florida. 10 years ago, I'd never had that.
Mm.
It'd been a pipe dream. But also just the idea that I can, there are things that happen when we as a collective talk to each other, things that go unsaid. My wife's got a job, she's got a salary, and she can be empathetic, and I can say any kind of worry that I've got, particularly, one thing copywriters often talk about is when we send off a piece of work for the first time to a new client, because you've no idea what their reaction is going to be.
Yeah.
And I can talk to my wife, and she thinks she's being supportive by saying, because well, she's not going to hear this podcast anyway, so she thinks she's being supportive by saying, "Oh, you're brilliant. Don't worry about it." That's not what I want to hear.
Yeah.
You know that feeling, and I think that there's a community of freelancers out there, let's say, self-employed, solopreneurs, call them what you like, that instinctively understands that feeling. And it's almost like nothing needs to be said. Um, I host sometimes the co-working meetings for Freelancer Mag, And it's just basically a bunch of copywriters and graphic designers and a few others that get together to do some to work together. There's something great
Yeah.
about watching somebody work on with a silent on working kind of a group of people on a screen all working together. It's motivational.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, a face to face is even more so, but on a Zoom screen, it's great. And we talk about these things, and we all say the same thing that there are hopes, wishes, and dreams that we have, and so much of it goes unsaid.
Mm.
But just to get back to your original point, and I'll just repeat, nothing is permanent. I mean, the good things as well as the bad, but let's talk about the bad first. Um, and there's always a way out. But that is the beauty of it as well. It's far less complicated than if you were, if you've got a horrible boss or something.
Mm.
All
Yeah.
comes
I
out
agree.
even if you've got that, or you've got a dead end job or something, or you can't stand your co-workers or whatever. It's a whole process to extract yourself from that situation.
Mm.
Whereas us, it's almost like it can change from one day to the next.
Yeah.
You don't know what tomorrow is made of.
No, you don't. And actually, like you say, nothing is permanent, and you can work your way out of a situation. There are people that you can rely on, and there are people that you can bounce off. One of the things that I'm quite interested to know, actually, is obviously I'm sure you're aware of this little thing called AI now, which has reared its head. And I obviously in the networking world, you get to meet a lot of people, and one of the topics of discussion that regularly comes up is how AI is going to impact on their business. With the industry that you're in, obviously copywriting has been affected by people using AI as a tool to write their own copy. How do you overcome that challenge because that's got to be a major threat to the industry.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure it's half. I think the threat is overstated,
Okay.
because I use it all the time as a data analysis, for inspiration, for all kinds of things. And it's a tool like any other. You've got to know how
Hmm.
to use it for it to be any good. Having a piano doesn't make you a piano player,
Hmm.
basically. If you don't know how to play the piano, you ain't. There's not no piano in the world is going to make you a concert pianist. So any AI is only as good as the input that you give it. I know there's a particular it's come up on my YouTube feed quite a lot. I mean, an A-list copywriter, and I mean kind of seven, eight-figure copywriters. They're using it all the time, but they're spending a day on the prompt.
Hmm.
It's not write me a sales letter for this product, because any old mug can do that. You won't sell diddly squat from it, but you'll
Mm.
have a sales page. You'll have a sales page. There's no guarantee it'll be any good. Um, and we're already seeing something of a backlash against that, um, from people that basically don't know what they're doing.
Hmm.
Um, and I'm learning as well. I'm getting better at doing the prompts, but the more you give it, the better your output's going to be. But you need to know what to give it. From a copywriter's point of view, you need to know the frameworks.
Hmm.
You need to know what problem, agitate, solution, outcome means,
Hmm.
and stuff like that. Um, I mean, I use it as a search engine. I use it as a translator sometimes when I can't think of a word that I know in one language and not the other. I use it for all kinds of things.
Yeah. It's really refreshing to hear you say that actually it's a tool that's at your disposal that you can use that can help make you produce some really, really good work.
It makes you better at what you do. I mean, the
Yeah.
combine harvest, I mean, the plow made tilling the fields easier than if you were doing it with a shovel.
Yeah.
The combine harvester, again, same thing.
Yeah.
and that's all. I mean, I pinched that from Gary Vee, I must admit. But
You've taken out the swear words though.
well, yeah. No, but the piano thing is me, which I think is kind of quite. I used to say to my daughter years ago when she was kind of 5 or 6, and she suddenly discovered I had I think it was an old 386 with Windows 3.1 on it and Word.
Wow, you're going back a bit now.
Yeah, it was just late 90s, Word version, whatever it was at the time. I mean, it was completely over her head. But I mean, I said to her, it's a tool again. It won't make you a good writer. Um, but nor would a pen and paper either,
Mm,
really.
yeah.
It's what goes on in your head and how you interact with that tool, which is the most important thing.
Mm. That's a that's such a good point. It's such a good point. So, I know you've got a YouTube channel
Yeah, I
that you
do.
use,
Nascent
um,
channel.
a basic YouTube channel,
Nascent.
nascent. Oh, sorry, I didn't hear that. So, tell us what is the YouTube channel about? What do you
It,
put on there,
well,
and what's your
on a
goal with it?
journey. I'm on a journey of discovery at the moment because I'm trying to figure it out, and so is YouTube trying to figure it out. But my basic idea is that we all have a story to tell. The tagline, the current tagline at the moment is story-based marketing for businesses that don't like to talk about themselves.
Yeah.
It's playing on this to some extent how to tell a story and how to apply a story in your marketing. Because marketing is basically emotions.
Hmm.
It's pulling heartstrings. And there's no better way of doing it than to tell a story about something. I mean, all the best ads right back to when I was a kid, um, there's a reason why washing powder ads haven't changed substantially since the 1960s and probably before then, is that they work.
Hmm.
It's always little Johnny who forgot his kit and it needs to be kind of clean by the next morning and everything. So you've got your basic hero's journey in there.
Hmm.
You've got little Johnny's. Oh, what's going to happen to my kit? Then you've got the mentor, which is basically mother, because it's always the mother, um, who has the tool, which is the washing powder, and the call to action: give us your stuff, and everyone is happy ever after at the end.
Hmm.
The problem there, the main problem addressed there is the emotion of the panic of not having the kit ready and all the stuff that kind of comes with that. Um, and that's all advertising is, and that's all marketing is. It's going back to joining the conversation your prospect is already having in their head. The 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 thing your prospect is thinking about is what Donald Miller calls the internal problem. Is all the consequences of the external problem. Like you have an external problem, like your computer's broken or something. Let's say it was your computer, or your graphic designer. Let's say graphic designer, his computer's broken. The internal problem there is I won't be able to do all my work. I won't be able to meet my deadlines. I won't be able to get paid. My wife will leave me and I'll end up on the street. Taking it, that's the internal problem we're talking about.
Yeah.
And they're all the problems that we are trying to solve as storytellers. Is those moments of panic that people are having in their heads of various levels,
It's
obviously.
the parallels there between sales, between that and sales are really, really strong.
Oh
So
yeah,
within sales, we talk about the problem,
yeah,
and you have the overriding problem, but then you have the pain that sits beneath the problem.
yeah,
And the pain is the thing that's the driver for the problem. But the pain
yeah.
is exactly what you're talking about there. I'm not going to
It's
be able
the
to pay
difference
my
between
bills. I'm
yeah,
going to lose my house. I'm going to lose the kids. I'm not going to be able to put the kids through school or whatever it might be.
whatever it is, yeah. And but yeah, it's the difference between
And
the external and the internal problem.
yeah, absolutely. And it's about capturing and understanding what that pain is, and dealing with that pain. It's exactly what you're talking about there, which
And
is
that's the thing that we all do in
yeah,
business. We all have a problem that we solve. Otherwise, you haven't got a business.
yeah. And I think we all have a problem that we solve, but actually, if it's just a problem you're solving, you're not differentiating yourself. But
No, no, exactly. No,
once
that's
you illustrate, you can understand and you can solve that pain. That's when you actually have something really concrete to a really concrete message
and
to
even
put
then,
across.
but even then, you are just a service provider.
Mm,
You know, all right, I can paint your ceiling. That's fine. But I mean, perhaps that's the wrong analogy, but it's how you do it.
mm,
It's all the other benefits, all the value added stuff that comes on top of that that you could argue is more important.
mm. Yeah,
Uh,
very much so.
it's a
But
whole rabbit hole for me to talk about this. I could go on about this all.
so we come sort of coming to the end of time now.
Yeah.
One question I wanted to ask you was if there is one piece of advice that you could give somebody who's starting out in business on their own.
Hmm.
They're right at the beginning of their journey. If there's one piece of advice, and obviously you talked about, nothing lasts forever, but if there's one piece of advice you could give somebody to help them on their journey, to be successful, what would that be?
The first thing that came into my head here, and it's going to sound a bit woo-woo, is live in the moment, appreciate it. Um, you get to do the greatest thing you could ever do is that you get to choose. Um, and however scary it feels at the moment, you are in control of your life.
Yeah,
Basically, I'm sorry if that doesn't sound any more practical, but I think it's a gift, and I haven't always appreciated that.
yeah. So I don't think that sounds woo-woo at all. I think that actually is really quite important
Yeah.
because all too often you get in your own head with stuff,
Yeah.
and actually you don't appreciate what you're doing. You don't appreciate necessarily the successes that your clients achieve
No.
because of the work that you've done with those clients.
I,
And
I,
you
I
don't
would also
necessarily appreciate you don't necessarily appreciate what's going on around you because you're too much like this. So I don't think that's woo woo at all.
but I would also say another thing that's just occurred to me is know your value.
Mm. Oh yeah, definitely.
Don't think just because you're starting that people can lowball you.
Yeah,
Because you may be just starting on your journey now as self-employed, but I bet you've got 20 years experience in doing what you do.
yeah,
It's not as though you come into this thing with no knowledge at all. And I hear it particularly with copywriters. Oh, I've only been doing this 6 months. So you're still giving value to a
yeah,
client. And if you're gonna help your client make 100 grand, well, go and charge 10% for it.
yeah,
'Cause if you said to me, I'm gonna help you make 100 grand, here's 10%, I'll bite your arm off.
yeah,
Where do I sign? Um, and there's too many. No, I won't say that. But I mean, it's don't let people lowball you, basically,
yeah.
because
I think a lot of it is people don't necessarily see their own value. They don't see
an
they
awful
don't
lot of
necessarily
people
see that they don't
starting with
necessarily
me,
see, and it's a common problem I see all the time.
there's
One
no
of
such thing as the going rate.
No,
The going rate is basically what people are prepared to pay.
yeah,
And there are people that will pay shed loads of money. You're not, I mean, the thing is getting in front of them. But you can have the same thing. It's perceived. Value is perceived. It's not absolute.
mm. I've got I've got I work with an accountability partner.
Yeah.
She's fantastic, Tracy, and we have conversations pretty much every Friday. And she was telling me about a story about somebody. So she's a web developer, digital marketer, and
Hmm.
she was telling me a story about a company that she started working with, and they're a startup. They've got seed capital,
Mhm.
So they have cash in the bank.
Mm.
And
Always have.
basically, a large London agency came along and
Mm.
charged them an absolutely astronomical amount of money for a service that she would have charged a fraction for.
Mm.
And it's that perceived value this large London agency is going to be doing everything for us that they can't do.
Yeah.
And because the price tag was higher, they thought actually that must be really worth it. They must be really very good at what they're doing. And I think that is something that people don't understand. And what happens in micro business and solo world is we think we've got to be cheap to show value, when actually
We
cheap
don't.
isn't always the best.
No.
And I think that's a really good point. To finish, I just want to thank you very much for your time this afternoon, Mike. I really appreciate
Anytime.
it.
I always like
Um,
doing these
I
things.
think there's some fantastic points that have come out there. What I'll do is after this, I'll put some links on to your book and to your YouTube channel, so anybody who
Yeah.
watches this can actually
Lovely.
see those. And thank you very much for your time, and have a great rest of the day, mate.
Thank you very much.
You are welcome.